And so it is. Welcome to Auth. Just remember, you asked for it. So, cool. So Auth is almost exactly like Rails Auth. We need to do a few more things by hand, but it's still roughly the same ideas. So let's write down what those are. First thing we need to do is be able to create a user account. So, anybody tell me what would be involved with creating a user account? Abstractly speaking.
You need some sort of database.
Some sort of database. What else?
You'd need to model some sort of user.
Model some sort of user. What else?
Primary keys, right? Or IDs.
Gotta have keys and what have you. What else do we need to do to create a user account?
Kyle, should we be seeing something on the screen?
Oh, yeah, you should. I shared it.
I just see a white screen.
You guys can't, can nobody see my whiteboard?
Now I do.
Now we see it.
Oh, okay, so you can't see it while I'm typing it. That's stupid. God, can I edit it? I hate this feature so fucking much. We go through this every morning in the staff meetings. How do I edit this? I can't. Oh my God, so fucking stupid. All right, let's keep going. What else?
You need to make a post request.
Okay, so it needs to be able to handle a post request. What else do we need to do to create a user account?
Probably needs like a route and a controller maybe.
Yeah, something like that. One more. We're just gonna take their password and sort in our database just like that.
I gotta hash the password.
You have to hash passwords. All right, so let's see if we can get this far. Let's see if we can do all these things. Let's see, how do I make Zoom stop doing this? Right there. There we go. Good God. Such a bad tool. All right. All right, so here I am with this empty folder. Nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. I would not recommend following along with this. I'm going to make a new package.json file, like so. Look, it makes a package.json file. I'm going to install Express, cores, connects, and PG. I'm going to make an index.js file. So now the root of my folder looks like so. If I go into that index.js file and I start an Express app, and then I make an app with it, and then I have that app listen on some port. And I set that port to either whatever is on process env port, or we can default it to 4000. And then, so we wanted a route. So a route in Express looks something like that. A controller, the equivalent of a controller in Express, looks something like this. Const create user request response. It's just a function. And then we can attach our route to that. And then inside this, we response.json user. You added a user. Yay. Cool. So those are like baseline Express app. If we've done any Express stuff, we can probably do all this. While we're at it, we can probably add cores as well, because it's one I always end up forgetting to do. Use cores. Nice. Any questions about anything I've done so far? Should probably also have body parser. That one's built in, so we don't need to install it. Something like that. Cool. So next thing that we needed to do, well, first of all, let's make sure this works. So I can, let's add a start script to package.json. And then npm start it. All right, it's listening on port 4000. So if I pull up yield postman, I should be able to make a post request to 4,000 users and see something come back. Post to 4,000 users. You added a user, yay! Cool, so we're that far. Now, let's add connects to this. So we do that with connects, init, makes me a connects file. If I open up that connects file, it says, all right, how do we set up a connection here? Well, we're using PG, and for our connection, come on now. We're going to do Postgres protocol, 3 slashes, and this database. What's the app? What are we building? Give me a noun.
Dogs.
What was it?
I just said dogs.
Dogs. Why not? We're going to call this Woofwire. All right, so this is going to try to connect to some Postgres database called Woofwire. So that means we need to make a database. Create DB Woofwire. It is so. I need to make a migration. connects migrate make, and we'll call it npx connects migrate make, and we'll call it user or create user. All right, worked. So if I go to that migration I just made, I can say something like return connects schema create table user. Now that we're not in Rails, let's go ahead and use singular table names as God intended. It's like one of my least favorite things about Active Record. And we'll say that it has an incrementing key, and it's got a string called username and a string called password digest. Why not? And then we will return connects schema drop table if exists user. Awesome. Does it work? npx connects migrate latest. And it is so. Now, last thing, we need a database connection. So let's make a database.js file. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull in our config information. So we're going to bring in the connects file. That's an object. The thing we want in the object is either process.env, node.env. So things like Heroku, we'll set that to production when you deploy. If it's not set, we want development. Cool. We also need connects for this. Good. And then we will module.exports, which is the same thing as export default, just for Node. And we're going to export default connects config. Neat. Now, if I go over to that index.js file, I should be able to bring in that database connection. And do something usery. Like get all the users. And then respond with them. So that should be like an empty array, I think is what would come back from that. Let's see. Oops, got to restart the server. Hey, and we got an empty array. So that tells me that we have this thing scaffolded out. So at this point, I'm going to commit this and push it up in case you'd like to follow along with the next part. So let's make this a Git repo. Let's make sure we get rid of these node modules in our Git repo. So we're going to echo node modules into .gitignore. While we're at it, we don't have one yet, but I imagine we probably will at some point. A .env. All right, so what am I committing? Committing all of this. So I add all of it. Then I make a push it up to GitHub. Get remote add origin, done. Done. All right, so if you would like to follow along with this next part, there's the repo. You will need to pull that down. You will need to npm install. You will need to create db woofwire. You will have to npx connect migrate latest. But if you do all those things, you should also be able to run npm start and see the same thing that I'm seeing. I'm going to pause for a minute and let you catch up if you feel so inclined. All right, all aboard is coming aboard. Any questions? All right, let's dig in. So we have the post request coming in. They're sending us, let's say, a username and password. We need to do a few things. We need to hash their password because we don't get that for free anymore, which means we need a way to hash their password. The way you do that, npm install bcrypt. Cool, very nice. I never remember what the API for bcrypt looks like. So we look it up. Bcrypt.hash takes in a plain text password, you put in a cost, and then you get that. It also has a promises one, which is the one that we want to use, like so. So we'll just blow all that out for right now. Our username and password is going to come in from the request. We can even destructure them out. So we could say something like username and password equals request.body. Yeah, just like that. And if we want to make sure that that worked, we could do something like console.log username password, like so. Now, if I npm start this, I should be able to post raw JSON username Kyle, password Kyle. All right, so if I do that, I should get 200 back, and it should have logged Kyle and Kyle. All right, we're in good shape so far. So I've got the username and the password, and I want to bring in bcrypt. And I'm going to run bcrypt.hash, and it wants the password, and it wants our cost. If like you don't have a compelling reason not to, use 12 for right now. 12's enough. And then the thing we get back from that is our hashed password. So now that we have our hash password, we can do a database insert. So we can do database user insert, and insert the username and say the password digest is the hashed password. And then once we've done that, we need to tell it what we want the insert to return. I'm going to say returning everything. And then with whatever we get back, I'm going to send it back and display to the user. Like that. Response.json. User is users 0. Cool. Fix the formatting on that. Something's hinky here. Ah, I need to close off that dot then. Okay. Something still doesn't look quite right. All right, let's see if I can run that without it throwing up. I can. And let's see if it works. If I fire this off, hey, I got a password digest. Beep boop boppy boopy. So I'm gonna hang there, and you can catch up if you'd like. Also, ask me some questions about this shit we just did.
For the request and response, because those are objects, right? I know that they're also HTTP like verbs, but they look like they're objects, right? Like request.body. Where else could I see like the whole request object and like I guess the power of that?
Sure.
Is pretty ridiculous.
It is wild. So those are very large. If you look at Express.js docs, API reference. Cool. These are all of the things in Express. Request and response it's like 2/5 of the framework. So these are all of the things that are on request. These are all the things that are on response. But yeah, they're just objects. So your mental model for all of Express, it's super different than Rails, than React, than any of the stuff we've done before. This pattern is called the middleware pattern. So we have a request and a response object, and Express is looking for things that match. So for example, use will match any HTTP verb. If you don't give it a string as the first argument, it'll also match any path. So what you can infer from this is that there's some function that called cores that when you invoke it returns some function that takes request, response, and next in as arguments, and it modifies request or it modifies response, and then it calls next. And then Express looks for the next thing that matches. So that'd be body parser. So we have something similar with body parser. And then, okay, cool, we find the next thing that matches. That ends up being this. All right, is this a post request to users? All right, if so, call this middleware function. And this also could have an argument called next. The reason we don't have it in there is this middleware keeps going, keeps looking for new matches until you call response.json or response.send or one of those methods, which just ends the entire thing. But in the case of cores, what it's happening is it'll do response.headers.set access control allow origin to star. In fact, that's literally what's happening in this thing. So it's setting that header in the response, but it's not sending the response. It's just building that response gradually. And then when this next thing calls, it just finds another pattern to match. And when it's all out of patterns to match, or you end up calling .json or .response or something, we're done. That pattern is called the middleware pattern. More questions? That's a little bit better. Cool. So I got a user. Name is Kyle. Password is Kyle. I'm storing a hash. All is good in the world. So that's step one. What is what is step two all about?
Tokens.
Yep. What's the, like, semantically, like, why do we use tokens? What's it about? What is the action we're trying to perform?
Authorization to a resource.
Yep. But if we said that like a human, it would be
You have access.
logging in. Logging in. Cool. So what are the steps of logging in?
You gotta like find the user, right?
Yep.
And then you gotta authenticate their password.
Authenticate their password. And then Jason, what's the last step of that?
Give them a token.
Give them a token. Cool. So we got to find the user, got to make sure their password is right, and then we got to give them a token. Let's do it. Where does my My Zoom controls keep going away. God, I'm getting extremely irritated with Zoom today. There we go. All right. So all right. I need a different route handler for this too. So this is going to be a post to login, and the controller for this is login. Takes in a request and response like any other middleware object, or middleware function, I mean. And we need to look up a user, auth their password, generate a token, give it back to them. So looking up a user. Anybody know Connects well enough to tell me how to do that?
Does I don't know, but does Connect use like SQL syntax?
Almost. It's the same kind of words. The syntax isn't the same, but the concept is kind of the same.
Would it be like database and then you put in the name of the table and then select?
And then what?
Select.
Yep. Then what? If I was doing it in like raw SQL, what would I do?
You'd add a where statement.
What would go in the where statement?
Your ID is equal to, or the username, I guess. That's what we're comparing, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's just something like that. And we can take this same thing from up here, do it there too. And since those are the same thing, we can use the shorthand. Okay, I have looked up a user. Then what?
I guess it's do you have to authenticate their password, right?
I do, but what if I didn't find a user?
Oh. Deny access, right? Like if no user or...
Yeah, so we just throw some kind of thing. So still need to dot then off of that. And we can say, all right, that's the user. I was going to say dot first on that. Because Connect queries always give you back an array no matter what, even if it's only one thing coming back. There's good reasons for that. But if you only want the first thing back, like in this scenario, you can do dot first at the end. All right, so I have this user. And if the user didn't come back, then what I want to do is throw an error. And say like, no user by that name. Cool. How do we handle thrown errors in JavaScript? Or rather, in promise chains?
With a catch?
With a catch. So we can catch that error. And then we can response.json with it. And say error is error.message. And also set the status to like 401. All right, so if anywhere in this chain of promises that we're doing, if anything throws an error, it's going to go to that catch handler. All right, if it didn't break, we want to auth their password. Any guesses how we do that?
We send it through the same hashing algorithm.
Yep. Now, we actually, Bcrypt has a little helper that will do some of this work for us. It's compare. So you do compare, you take the password you were given, and then you take the hashed password, and then Bcrypt does the work of figuring out if they're the same. Don't try doing this yourself with like double equals or something like that. It's more complicated than that. But Bcrypt compare will handle all of it for you. So we can do something like return bcrypt.compare and compare user.password digest with the password we were given. And then we can dot then off of that. So, so we'll say like password did match. That's the thing that's going to get returned from this. It's just true or false. And so then we can do the same kind of thing. If not password did match, then let's throw a new error. Wrong password, bub. So that is verifying their password. All right. So assuming all of that works, now we want to generate a token. How do we do that?
It doesn't involve JWT, does it?
It certainly involves JWT. So there's also a library for that in NPM. It's called JSON Web Token. So kill this server, npm install JSON Web Token, like that. That's it, right? Yep.
So this process, is this pretty standard across the board for most like back-end technologies in this process, or does it vary from I don't know, like technology to technology?
Not from technology to technology. It varies approach to approach. So the kind of auth that I've been teaching you guys is called stateless token-based auth. It's one of like 3 kind of common ways to do this. The other ways are not night and day different, but the way that we do it, we don't have to keep track of who's logged in and who's not. The other really popular way to do this is session-based auth. So if you went through any of the LearnCo labs about auth, they had to do session auth. So it works very similarly, but you have a table in your database that keeps track of every user who's currently logged in. And that has a little ID that goes with it. And you send that back to a user in a cookie. And then they send the cookie back to you every time they want to do something. And then you pull their session out of the database. We don't have to do that. What we do instead is we give these tokens that we sign, and then they give us back the token, and we check to see if they tampered with it. Different kind of thing. The third really popular way is OAuth, which is also actually a stateless token-based kind of thing like we're doing here, except we don't do it. A third party does. So the idea here is like, yo, I don't trust you. You could be saying you're fucking anyone for all I know. You say you're Joe Pesci. I'm just supposed to believe you. But you don't trust me. I'm just some startup jackass. Why would you give me a password? And so, but both of us trust Google. Both of us trust Facebook, something like that. And so you go, all right, I'll tell you what. If you can log into Facebook successfully, Facebook will let me know that you did that, and you've authorized them to give me your email address. And that's good enough for me. And so then you, like on a technical level, you end up getting a token that you use exactly the same way you do with tokens that you're doing yourself.
And sorry, just one more about the session. Like, would you opt for like a session if you want to like track what the user is doing on your site or something, or is that like, is it just a different way? Am I just overthinking that?
You can. It's just a different way. You can. It's got some trade-offs with it. The biggest one is that with session-based auth, you can't invalidate, or sorry, with session-based auth, if let's say you have a list of employees as records in your database, and one of them gets fired, goes rogue, you can lock them out of your system by just deleting their session. Like, they won't be able to do anything from then on. That's not the case with tokens. You can't do that with tokens. If somebody has a valid token, there's not really a great way to invalidate it right away. You can expire them. You can say, this token's only good for an hour. But if it's minute 1 of that hour and you're trying to lock someone out of your system, it's still good for another 59 minutes. So there's that risk with tokens. Now, one of the reasons people like tokens, myself included, is that if we're storing these sessions in a database, that means every time somebody wants to do some kind of authenticated action, you have to look up their fucking session in the database. Database calls are expensive. And so that really slows that down a lot. Versus the token, I can run a quick function to check whether or not the token is real or not, and then just move on with my life. Now, the problem is that, yeah, I can't expire it then. So there's a way around that. You probably are like wheels turning right now. It's like, all right, well, can I keep a whitelist of valid tokens? It's like, cool. Where are you going to keep those? Are you going to keep them in a database? And they're going to make a database call to see if it's a valid token? And then like, you're just doing sessions at that point. So like JOTs have their haters, but I think it's like the simplest mental model for it. And it works really well in like 80% of cases. Cool. So back to the matter at hand. We're trying to generate a token. We got the JSON web token package in here. And I also have never bothered to memorize the API for this because why would I? It's a waste of time. So jot.sign, that's an awful lot like jot.encode. It takes a payload and a secret. So we could do something like jot.sign, maybe, ooh, interesting. So I need that user. So this is, people don't like this about promises, and I can see why, but I don't think it's, I think it's better than a lot of the alternatives. So what I really want here, I need to be able to see that user, but that user is only in scope for these couple of lines. So what I can do, you can do promises inside of promises. We can do a dot then there, and then have the password did match. All of that stuff happen off of this. handler right there. And if that doesn't throw an error, then we return the user. And now that becomes the user. So we could use the entire user as a payload because objects and hashes are the same thing in JavaScript. And then our secret. Cool, so we sign it. That is almost definitely asynchronous. Yep. And does this allow promises? Promises? Promise? Nope. All right, have to use the callback. Suck. All right. So this is going to take a function as its third argument. Take a look at the example. Yeah, takes a function as the third argument. And then we can do something like response.json token. And if you ask me, I think we did it all. Let's see. Okay, so I've made this user. If I change that to login, do I get a token back? Wrong password. You're the wrong password. I don't think that actually is the wrong password, so let's debug this. So what I want to see is I got past this part. It's failing in here. So I want to see what user.password digest is, and I want to see what the password is. Restart. Okay, that looks good. Oh, I see what the problem is. The order matters on this. So it actually has to be that. All right, kill the server, restart it. How do you like me now? Still think I have the wrong password? I logged it correctly.
You didn't change your bcrypt.
Oh, I just changed the log. Thank you. Come on, Coverly. It's the end of the day for everybody. All right, so I run that. All right, and it got me to the right line. Now we just got to troubleshoot this token. So I want to see. What's the user? What's the secret? What's the token? It might not like this, that single quote there. It might not like the spaces either. All right, let's try that. All right, that object looks pretty good.
You don't have to encode the token, right?
You know, I might need to encode the object. It might not like that. Let's take a peek. So if I did want to do that, it'd probably be something like json.stringify user, and then payload. Oh, no, I know what happened. That actually worked fine. This is like one of the most confusing things about like once you get past all the beginner tutorials and stuff with Node. Node uses this thing called error first callbacks all over the damn place. It's not a Node specific thing. This also happens a lot in Go, but this callback, it doesn't take a token as its first argument. It takes an error as its first argument. And the way that's supposed to work is you're supposed to check to see if anything's there. And if there is, you throw an error. Like that. All right, let's give that a try. So I run it. Hey, I got a token. And since that's just a jot, I can copy it down. I can take it over to JWT.io. I can see what it looks like. Hey, look, it's my shit. Ask me some questions about this.
I'm for my project, I'm not using Connects. I'm using like a local company here in Denver called Harper, and I'm just curious, like from what it sounds like, that this process will be for the most part very similar to the auth process. But like, I guess are there just steps here that I should kind of like, okay, well, this is not always going to be kind of a one-for-one. This is just a connect. Is there anything in here particular that's related to connects? It doesn't really look like it, but
not really. So the connects things that we've done are we inserted a user and then looked them up. That's it. We could have just had objects in here. Would have worked the same way. That's the only connect specific stuff. So we're out of time, but that third step where we like verify a token. Verify. Give it a token, give it your secret. It returns whether or not they're the same thing. Or sorry, it yeah, will give you the decoded token. Error first. And you can do whatever you want with it after that. And a really common thing is to make that a middleware that adds a user to your request object. So for example, in the Firebase site, that's exactly what we do. All right, so I have this authenticate user. Hey, what do you know? It checks to see if the header is there. If it's not, throws an error. Otherwise, it pulls the token out of the header. It runs verify with the token, whatever your secret is, an error first callback. Then we look up a user. We set the request object's user property to that, and then call for the next one. And then what you end up doing, so that gets exported out of this file. What you end up doing is you go, okay, anytime somebody wants to get a user profile, authenticate them. Somebody wants to make a new user, authenticate them. Somebody wants to log in, don't authenticate them. How would that make sense? They haven't logged in yet. But you just throw that middleware in front of any route that you want to have authenticated. And now all of those ones that are authenticated, like the create users, well, that might not be a good example. Let's take a look at the standards one. They're not using the user, but if I wanted to keep track of who created a standard, for example, that's available on request.user at that point.